He sat alone in the stillness of his room, the glow of the evening sun fading through the window as shadows stretched across the floor. His hands rested heavily on his knees, fingers slightly trembling, not from fatigue, but from the weight quietly settling in his heart. The world outside bustled with promise, countless faces chasing dreams painted in bright hues of success and abundance. Yet inside him, something was missing, a void that no accolade or achievement had ever filled. For years, he had believed that prosperity was the answer: more money, more recognition, more control over his circumstances. He pursued each goal with relentless determination, driving himself through long nights and endless days, pushing past exhaustion as if the next milestone could finally stitch together the fractures inside. But with every step forward, the emptiness grew deeper, whispering a silent question he couldn't yet put into words. What if all of this is not just about me? What if there's something more beneath the surface of my success? In a quiet moment of vulnerability, he admitted to himself the truth he had long resisted: the prosperity he sought was incomplete, hollow, without a greater purpose to give it meaning. There was a longing not just for wealth, but for significance, something that transcended personal gain and touched the lives of others. Yet the path to that revelation was clouded by uncertainty, tangled with fears and doubts that whispered he was unworthy, broken, or simply not enough. "I don't know where to begin," he confessed aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do you start to heal when you don't even understand what's missing?" In that confession lay a universe of unspoken pain, years of carrying burdens he never voiced, wounds no one saw. The absence wasn't just about material lack, it was about a deeper kind of scarcity that runs through the soul. A scarcity of peace, of belonging, of trust in something larger than himself. The kind of scarcity that makes you question your place in the world and whether your life holds any true significance. Yet, even amid this struggle, a spark flickered, the unshakable hope that healing was possible, that the emptiness could be transformed, and the brokenness restored. He sensed that this was not simply about filling a void with more things or achievements, but about something far more profound. It was a call inviting him to step beyond himself, beyond the familiar pursuits of comfort and control, toward a life where his prosperity could be more than just a personal triumph. It could be a channel for grace, for healing, for purpose greater than he had ever imagined. But that calling stirred an uncomfortable question. Before he could become a beacon for others, what was it that needed to be healed within him? What barriers had to be dismantled? What pieces of his story remained shadowed, hidden from his own view? In facing those questions, the journey that lay ahead shimmered both with promise and with challenge, a pathway that demanded courage to confront deep truths and the patience to allow transformation to unfold. He closed his eyes and breathed in slowly, feeling the tension loosen just enough to hear a whisper from within, a quiet invitation to discover what God might want to heal in him. An invitation not just to chase prosperity for its own sake, but to embrace a destiny in which his abundance became a vessel of hope and blessing. The hero in his story was waiting, not just to conquer external battles, but to be transformed by an inner grace that would redefine success itself. And in that sacred pause, as the evening shadows deepened into night, he dared to wonder, if God could heal his lack, his sense of incompleteness, what new life might rise from that healing? What purpose might finally emerge from the place he thought was broken beyond repair? The journey was quietly beginning, an uncharted path toward a prosperity that served a greater good, a calling that invited him beyond the horizon of his own desires into the vast possibilities of healing, purpose, and transformation. In the quiet corners of his mind, the hero began to recognize whispers he had long ignored, subtle, persistent echoes of unworthiness and doubt that had taken root early, much like hidden cracks within the foundation of a once sturdy house. These weren't dramatic, glaring wounds but delicate fractures shaped by years of dismissal, unmet expectations, and silent compromises. He recalled moments when praise felt undeserved, when success was tinged with guilt, as if each achievement came at a secret cost. Such fissures in his spirit weren't immediately obvious, yet they steadily chipped away at his confidence and clouded his sense of belonging. One afternoon, as he sifted through old journals, a phrase caught his eye: "I am not enough." The words appeared repeatedly in different entries, each a subtle confession wrapped in layers of fear and longing. This simple, crystalline statement unraveled a thread he hadn't been aware he was clutching tightly, a belief so ingrained that it shaped his every move, whether he acknowledged it or not. Understanding this wasn't just an epiphany, it was a turning point, for in naming the core of his inner struggle, he took the first step toward liberation. The realization that his scarcity wasn't merely external but seated deeply within was both daunting and strangely freeing. On one particularly reflective evening, he sat across from a wise mentor, a gentle soul who had walked similar winding paths. Their conversation veered into uncharted territory when the mentor leaned forward and said, "What you lack isn't a thing to be chased outside yourself. It's an absence inside, a need for wholehearted acceptance, for genuine belonging to the source of all life." Those words struck a chord. The hero felt a warmth ripple in his chest. It was as if light had pierced the fog surrounding his heart. Here, the missing piece suddenly gained shape. It was the yearning for connection beyond performance, beyond outcomes, a bond with a divine presence that could fill what worldly success never reached. Gradually, this understanding invited the hero to confront not only the overt limitations in his life but also to wrestle tenderly with long-buried emotional wounds. Memories unfolded, painting scenes where he felt unseen or unheard within family gatherings, dismissed or undervalued in formative years. Such experiences had implanted a silent narrative: to matter, I must prove myself, achieve, outperform. However, those early stories had outlived their usefulness, becoming invisible chains binding him to a cycle of relentless striving. Recognizing this, he began to grasp that the real healing lay in releasing these inherited scripts, embracing his worthiness not through deeds but through intrinsic value anchored in unconditional love. One night, besieged by restlessness, he penned a letter, not to anyone else but to himself, a ritual suggested by his mentor to foster self-compassion. The words spilled out like a healing balm: "I am more than my fears. I am enough just as I am. My imperfections do not disqualify me from grace." Writing this became a sacred act, breaking through decades of self-judgment. This unfolding narrative of inner validation was unfamiliar at first, a fragile shoot pushing through hardened soil. Yet with time, that shoot grew stronger, nourishing his soul as he consistently chose kindness over criticism in his self-dialogue. Meanwhile, the hero encountered moments of resistance. Internal voices warned him against vulnerability, lest he appear weak or lose control. These guardians of his old identity clashed fiercely with the emerging truth, conjuring fears that letting go of self-sufficiency would mean failure. In those moments, he turned to meditation and prayer not as routines but as lifelines, places where he could face fear directly and invite divine healing. Sitting quietly, he imagined a gentle presence surrounding the broken parts within, pouring warmth into cold corners, whispering acceptance into somber doubts. This practice didn't instantly erase the pain but softened its edges, allowing him room to breathe and to trust in restoration rather than punishment. The transformation wasn't linear. It often felt like walking through a dense forest without a map, uncertain of each step yet compelled forward by a flicker of hope. Equally important was the hero's growing awareness that healing scarcity was not about opening a treasure chest of riches for himself alone but about preparing an open vessel for something far greater to flow through him. Just as a carved wooden cup can only hold what its maker intends, his own readiness depended on refining the vessel of his heart, sanding away rough edges of doubt, filling cracks with faith, and polishing the surface with gratitude. Now, consider how this applies when you face your own inner emptiness. What stories have you accepted as truth about yourself that might quietly erode your sense of worth? What hidden fractures could God be inviting you to bring into the light, not to condemn, but to redeem? The hero's journey reveals that before prosperity can become a channel of blessing, the internal landscape must be tenderly healed. Scarcity, after all, is often less about actual lack and more about the subtle absence of trust in the divine presence dwelling within. When that trust begins to grow, even the deepest scarcity is gently transformed into abundance, not accumulation of things, but a richness of heart, overflowing with purpose and generosity. In this unfolding process, the hero no longer views his limitations as curses but as sacred cracks through which light seeps in. He grows to realize that vulnerability is not a sign of defeat but a gateway to authentic strength. The call now isn't to armor himself against lack but to surrender it, to invite God's healing hand to restore what was thought lost so that he might serve as an unblocked conduit of grace. Every scar remade becomes a testament, not to what he endured alone, but to the transforming power that holds him steady, shaping his prosperity into something luminous and true. Late one humid summer evening, as amber streetlights flickered to life along the empty avenue, the hero found himself wandering through a quiet park that stirred memories beneath its grand oak trees. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and jasmine, mingling with a distant hum of cicadas, a symphony of life thriving quietly in overlooked spaces. He stopped near a withered bench, its paint peeling like layers of yesterday's regrets, and sat down. In that moment, the stillness invited an overlooked truth to surface. What God might be calling him to heal was not only a void but an unresolved tension between his vocation and his true nature. For years, he had equated productivity with identity, shaping his worth through visible outcomes, projects completed, goals achieved, hurdles overcome. Yet, beneath the surface of these external milestones hid a restless dissonance. His spirit bristled whenever success demanded sacrificing his own authentic rhythm. This was a subtle disconnection, something that whispered through his veins, urging him to ponder his place not merely as a doer but as a being with purpose woven intricately into his soul. That evening in the park, the hero realized that what needed mending was a fractured relationship with himself, an exhaustion caused not by failures or fear but by a disconnect from his own essence. A story from his childhood emerged unbidden, a small boy eagerly running through rain-drenched fields, losing himself in the pure joy of movement, unburdened by expectation. The memory contrasted sharply with the man he had become, who often silenced the spontaneous laughter and curiosity beneath layers of duty. It dawned on him that God's healing might be about unlocking the creative flow inhabiting the core of his being, nurturing playfulness and wonder that had been suppressed by rigid self-control. This insight rippled through him like a fresh breeze, unsettling yet invigorating. Without warning, his phone buzzed, a text from a friend inviting him to join a community art project aimed at transforming neglected urban spaces into vivid murals. Though hesitant at first, feeling unqualified beyond his professional skills, he recognized the invitation as more than casual outreach. He replied with a tentative "I'll come," sensing that stepping into unfamiliar territory might catalyze aspects of healing that structured success never could. Painting alongside strangers, sharing laughter and stories under the open sky, awakened dormant parts of his soul. Each brushstroke became a metaphor for reclaiming fractured pieces of his identity, the messy, imperfect colors blending into something uniquely beautiful. One evening during this collaboration, an elderly woman from the neighborhood paused beside him. Her eyes sparkled with a timeless wisdom as she remarked, "When we heal the parts of us that long for authentic expression, we not only become whole but light the way for others stuck in shadow." Her words echoed deeply, planting a seed. Healing wasn't confined to private restoration but extended outward, igniting a collective transformation when individual souls found freedom. This revelation invited the hero to reconsider prosperity itself, not as accumulation but as abundant overflow emanating from healed wholeness, spreading like ripples across a still pond. This experience catalyzed a new internal dialogue. He confronted the tension between ambition and authenticity by writing a personal manifesto, a declaration that balanced drive with self-compassion. Rather than allowing relentless striving to define his value, he penned affirmations honoring creative rest, curiosity, and the embrace of uncertainty. The process was challenging. It required dismantling long-held beliefs that productivity alone legitimized his existence. Yet as he grounded himself in these new proclamations, he noticed a subtle transformation, a gradual thawing of rigidity and an openness to flow with life's unpredictable rhythms. Simultaneously, the hero encountered resistance in the form of external pressures, expectations from family, colleagues, and society that prized measurable success above all else. Navigating these demands while nurturing his emerging sense of self-authenticity felt like balancing on a narrow ledge. Yet instead of retreating, he experimented with honest conversations, sharing insights about his evolving priorities. Some met his openness with confusion or skepticism, but others responded with encouragement, revealing their own hidden struggles beneath polished facades. These exchanges deepened his conviction that healing one's inner alignment often invites collective healing, breaking cycles of performative living imposed by cultural norms. Now, Consider this when you reflect on your inner landscape. What aspects of your true self might be yearning for expression beyond the roles you inhabit? Is there an untended spark, imaginative, playful, or simply still, that waits patiently for your permission to enliven your days? The hero's journey shows that healing God intends goes beyond closing voids. It involves reconciling the parts of us overshadowed by expectation, allowing vibrant authenticity to emerge. To become a conduit through which divine abundance flows, one must embrace the fullness of being, not just achieving but creating space for the soul's unique rhythm and unfiltered voice. In this unfolding narrative, prosperity evolves into a living ecosystem nourished by integrity, creativity, and wholehearted engagement. Like a vast metropolis that thrives not only on infrastructure but on the spontaneous laughter echoing in its streets, your life can pulsate with dynamic abundance once internal harmony is restored. Embracing this dimension requires courage to release old scripts about identity and value, inviting a richer, textured experience of purpose where healing on the deepest level catalyzes a flourishing not previously imagined. The path forward expands, illuminated by this newfound alignment between inner truth and outward action, an essential crucible for becoming a channel of grace and profound prosperity. Under the muted glow of a solitary lamp, he traced the contours of an old photograph, edges frayed from years of handling, the image faded but unmistakable. It captured a moment long past, a younger version of himself, eyes wide with eager anticipation, standing beside his father who wore a smile more weary than joyful. In that frozen scene lay an unspoken story, one that had quietly shaped the pattern of seeking and scarcity etched inside him. Yet this wasn't merely about uncovered wounds. It was a doorway revealing the intricate dance between inherited expectations and his own emerging spirit. That evening, as rain tapped a rhythmic pulse against the window pane, the hero found himself grappling with a realization that cut deeper than any external barrier. The absence God desired to heal was bound to unresolved allegiance he'd formed, not with others, but with the patterns of seeking approval forged in childhood. His identity had become tethered to a relentless pursuit of validation, a hunger not for material wealth alone but for a permission slip to simply be. The irony weighed heavily, so much of his outward success had been a camouflage, masking an emptiness grown from a disconnect between his soul's longings and the roles imposed on him. The following days unfolded like pages turning in a secret journal, revealing how much he had sacrificed his own voice to inhabit an image seen as worthy. He recalled conversations where his true feelings had been swallowed, ambitions quietly muted to fit expectations that operated like invisible chains. The gravity of this truth unsettled him, yet also sparked a flicker of resolve. If prosperity was to carry a higher purpose, then it must first dismantle the false pillars erected by unexamined loyalties. Only by freeing himself from these inherited shackles could his abundance become a force that uplifted rather than suffocated. One crisp morning, clutching a steaming cup that steamed faint as the chill crept through the cracked window, the hero attended a workshop led by a delicate yet fierce storyteller who spoke of ancestral healing, not as a drama of blame but as a tender reclamation. Within your bloodline, she said, live echoes and burdens passed down like heirlooms. To channel divine fullness, you must trace these patterns with gentle curiosity and loosen the knots entwined in your heart. Her words rolled inside him, peeling back layers of resistance and inviting him to explore the invisible scripts that had scripted his quest for worthiness. He began journaling fragments of his lineage, piecing together stories of resilience shadowed by sacrifice, of dreams deferred and voices hushed. In this act, the hero encountered a paradox. These inherited narratives, while constricting, were also reservoirs of profound strength waiting to be reclaimed in new light. This awareness birthed a delicate empathy, not only for his ancestors but for himself, for the ways he had unwittingly carried their burden while seeking his own liberation. The realization was sobering. Healing scarcity was not a solitary act but a generational unfolding, where grace invited each link in the chain toward freedom. Against this backdrop, he engaged a novel practice, rituals not of productivity but of presence. At dawn, he walked barefoot on dew-kissed grass, feeling the earth's cool pulse through his soles, a grounding reminder that prosperity began beneath the surface, in the nourishing embrace of now. In these quiet moments, he whispered prayers for release, envisioning old loyalties dissolving like morning mist warmed by sun. The ritual transformed into an anchor, returning him whenever old voices clamored, a sacred space where he could hold tension and grace simultaneously. Encounters with others also shifted subtly. During a chance meeting at a local cafe, a woman's candid reflection drew him out of isolation. "I used to believe my worth depended on constant achievement," she confided. "But when I stopped trying so hard to prove myself, the moments of true abundance found me." Her words resonated deeply, stirring within him the courage to express vulnerabilities long concealed beneath layers of armor. Shared stories became bridges, connecting hearts wounded by similar histories, reminding the hero that healing is often woven in the tapestry of communion rather than solitary struggle. Now, ponder this when your spirit wrestles with invisible debts inherited from those who came before. What unspoken agreements have you carried, silently defining your margins of success and failure? What liberation might arise if you allowed divine kindness to unravel these bindings with patience and gentleness? The hero's path illustrates that scarcity's root often lies in loyalties misunderstood or unquestioned, and that true prosperity demands a radical shift, a reclaiming of self not merely as an individual but as a vital link in a chain longing for wholeness. In the delicate unfolding of this narrative, the hero's prosperity acquires a new texture, one imbued with responsibility to heal not only personal lack but systemic wounds passed through generations. His transformation becomes less about accumulation and more about integration, weaving together fractured histories into a living testament of grace. This deeper composure plants the seeds for a flourishing that cannot be confined to isolated success but blooms as a shared blessing, channeling God's healing power through a lineage renewed and a heart unbound. Reflecting on this journey so far, imagine standing at the edge of a vast, restless sea just as dawn breaks, a moment when the horizon blurs, and the sky and water merge in an iridescent embrace. The air is thick with the promise of transformation, though the course ahead remains veiled in mist. In that quiet, liminal space, you realize the tides that have shaped you run far deeper than the surface waves of your experience. Beneath the churn of everyday striving and longing resides a profound current, carrying the lifeblood of a story far older and more intricate than your individual struggle. You feel its pull, subtle but undeniable, inviting you to trust not only what you see but what you sense in the spaces between certainty and mystery. The path you have traversed has stirred not only the soil of your heart but the very roots entwined beneath layers of time and expectation. Like ancient trees weathering storms but bearing new blossoms, the parts of you once fragmented and hidden begin knitting together into a tapestry weaving vulnerability with resilience, doubt with dawning courage. The weight of unseen burdens softens, not into frailty, but into a graceful acceptance that creates room for renewal. Each step forward isn't simply progress, it's a reclamation of the voice that was muffled, the creativity that was deferred, the wholeness that was always your birthright but momentarily obscured. Where once there was a tendency to close off, to armor against potential hurt or rejection, now brews an openness, an invitation to lean fully into what might be, not despite fear but because of it. You sense that the very cracks you once sought to hide are channels ready to channel light and life in ways you hadn't imagined. The subtle alchemy of healing has begun, the once limiting narratives that held you captive unravel into threads you can gently reweave. There is a sacred rhythm emerging, a cadence marked by stops and starts, trust and hesitation, shadow and illumination. And in this dance, the contours of your purpose begin to shift, no longer bound by earlier definitions or external validations, but arising from a deeper wellspring within. The narrative that has been unfolding beckons with a quiet urgency, not a shout on the mountaintop, but a whisper shared across the hush of evening stars, inviting a reckoning with the gifts and scars alike. What once felt like fragmented pieces now resonate with the hum of connection. The interplay of light and shadow reveals not contradiction but complementarity, allowing a fuller spectrum of your humanity to emerge. In embracing this, you start sensing the contours of a destiny that transcends mere personal gain. It is one that threads through the lives around you, weaving your prosperity into a fabric of collective flourishing. The realization dawns that true abundance carries not only privilege but profound responsibility to serve as a vessel, not merely to be filled but to pour forth. And as you pause to feel this evolving narrative deep within your chest, the cadence of your breath aligns with an expanding horizon, one that holds both the ache of your journey and the shimmering potential born from it. There is a tension here, electric and alive, between holding on and letting go, between the comfort of familiar patterns and the invitation into uncharted transformation. The landscape you are stepping into is neither wholly known nor unknown, it is a space pregnant with possibility, where old wounds serve as fertile soil for new growth and where scarcity quietly dissolves into the promise of plenitude. This moment is not an endpoint but a gateway, a still point pregnant with gravity and grace. The threads of your story stretch taut, woven into a tapestry both fragile and fierce, shimmering in the light of dawning understanding. Here, the past's silent echoes converge with the future's unspoken call, poised to pulse fully alive in the present. The unfolding journey beckons you forward, toward a horizon where prosperity's meaning expands, where the self opens not in isolation but in profound intersection with a higher purpose that courses through you. And so, in this breath held between reflection and revelation, you are invited to step beyond the familiar, guided by the quiet rhythm of a heart increasingly attuned to the sacred pulse of transformation. The sea before you swells, not with storms alone but with the tides of grace, poised to carry you toward the fullness awaiting just beyond the dawn. The hero stood at the edge of a quiet clearing beneath a sky painted with the soft pastels of fading dusk. Around him, the whisper of leaves swayed gently in the evening breeze, and somewhere just beyond, the distant call of a nightbird punctuated the stillness. Here, in the embrace of a moment suspended between day and night, he felt a convergence, a drawing together of everything he had walked through, every ache and revelation that had shaped the contours of his being. The emptiness he once feared now softened into a doorway, not a void but a threshold pregnant with possibility. Long ago, he had chased prosperity like a mirage across endless deserts, convinced that accumulating more would fill the hollows nestled within. But through silence and storm, triumph and questioning, he had come to see prosperity anew, not as a prize to possess, but as a current to flow through. Prosperity, he understood now, was meant to be breathed into life's many corners as grace, a channel through which abundance became an act of giving rather than merely receiving. This shift was neither sudden nor scripted, it was forged in the tender embrace of honesty and courage, in the willingness to name his scars and allow God's healing touch to rewrite their meaning. As the twilight deepened, he remembered the faces that had crossed his path, those who had shared stories of struggle and hope, whose voices had become threads weaving a larger, richer tapestry. He recalled the moments when vulnerability bled into strength, when broken pieces were gathered with reverence rather than rejection. These recollections seeded a quiet truth that shimmered in his chest: healing was never solitary. It was both the unspooling of a personal story and the gentle awakening of connection, a sacred dance between the self and the other, the seen and the unseen. "You are more than your lack," a voice whispered within him, steady and kind, as if carried on the wind itself. "Your scarcity is not a measure of your worth but an invitation to become a vessel. Let the cracks in your heart be the places where light streams in. Let them be the riverbeds where new life collects and flows outward." The words wrapped around him with warmth, a balm for the depths he hadn't dared expose before. In them he found permission to release the fierce grip on control, to trust in unseen processes unfolding beneath the surface, to step into a role not of perfection but of presence. It was here, between the fading light and the rising stars, that he embraced what had eluded him for so long, that the true purpose behind healing scarcity was to transform it into service, to become a conduit of blessing whose flow sustained others far beyond his singular reach. Prosperity, when awakened this way, no longer revolved around gathering or guarding, but around surrendering with faith and generosity. It was a call to show up fully, to wield abundance as a bridge rather than a barrier, to honor the gift of healing by giving it away freely. The clearing itself seemed to breathe as the night deepened, cradling the hero in its vast quiet. In the infinite rhythm of the universe, his own heartbeat found harmony, a steady pulse that echoed the pulse of something greater. There was no need for grand gestures or loud declarations here, the transformation was embodied in simple truths lived quietly and fully. To be a channel was to embody trust, resilience, and compassion, to speak with the vulnerable voice of someone who had known lack and emerged renewed. And so, with the stars awakening overhead like scattered promises, the hero gathered his scattered parts, his doubts, his hopes, his weary longings, and felt them solidify into a new foundation. The call was clear: To let healing flow through him, to embrace prosperity as a profound gift intertwined with purpose, and to meet each day with the humility and strength of one who understands that his richest wealth was never in what he held, but in what he released. As you tread your own path, may you hear that quiet invitation, feel the steady pulse beneath your own horizon. Whatever scarcity stirs within you, know it too carries a purpose, a sacred call to become a channel where grace gathers and radiates, where brokenness is not an endpoint but a beginning. In the unfolding of your story, may you find the courage to let healing shape you and the strength to let your prosperity serve a purpose far greater than yourself. The journey is unfolding still, a living testament to the power of transformation, and you, just like the hero beneath the twilight sky, are poised to rise, whole, radiant, and free. The wounds we carry, the voids we carry, are intertwined with a collective tapestry of humanity. When we allow our healing to be shared, it becomes a light others can follow through their darkness. Our stories of brokenness refracted through love become a compass, guiding others toward hope. The prosperity born from this process becomes not just a personal blessing but a shared legacy. I invite you, in whatever season you find yourself, to lean into the shadows with gentleness and curiosity. To consider whether the parts of your journey you've hidden, resisted, or feared might actually be the gateways to transformation. Imagine embracing those parts with openness, allowing something supremely tender and powerful to take root inside you. It won't always be comfortable. It may ask you to step into unfamiliar terrain, to trust in a process unfolding beyond sight or certainty. But in that courageous step lies the possibility of discovering a wellspring you never knew existed, one that flows through you into the world, carrying healing and purpose in equal measure. There is something sacred in becoming a channel that pours forth grace. This calling transcends achievement or possession, it is an invitation to align with a rhythm larger than self, where prosperity is measured not by what we hold but by what we release. As I continue on this path, I carry with me the quiet assurance that absence is not the end. It is the space before emergence, the preparation ground for abundant flow. The journey invites us all to become curators of that flow, weaving fragmented pieces into a narrative of strength, connection, and meaning. In the unfolding of all this, I find hope anew, not a fleeting hope tied to outcomes, but a steady flame rooted in the depth of life itself. And as I stand here now, breathing in the complexity of what it means to be human, I offer a simple prayer for us both. May we have the courage to face what aches within, the grace to receive what heals, and the openness to become ever more radiant channels of a love that transforms and sustains.